I'm AP Townley, and this is Roleplay Culture. Is there anything cooler than a mage's staff? Or even a spellcaster's wand? You might argue that the Shining Knight's sword of Omen's Excalibur, Vorpal, whatever, is better, but not for my book it isn't. You can swing that blade all you want, but it won't matter when my staff of power incinerates you.
You shall not pass!
But what magic items do we choose for the arcane mages? We're talking wizards, sorcerers, bards, and yes, even artificers. That's a lot of ground to cover, so let's get started with the 5 magic items for the arcane spellcasters in D&D 5e. Number 1, magic foci. Let's get this one out of the way since it's the most obvious choice. We discussed this type of magic item in the divine list up over here. But essentially, spellcasters need a magic focus to work their hoodoo that they do. The Tasha's Cauldron from Everything has a couple of really good options for these 4 classes. Let's go through them. All of them require attunement, and they all give a +2 spell attack rolls and spell saving throw DCs based on their rarity. So +1 for uncommon, +2 for rare, so on and so forth. You get the idea. And all of them count as a spellcaster's focus. The Wizard's Arcane Grimoire enhances their arcane recovery. When you use this ability, your recovered spell slots increase by 1, so a 5th level wizard would normally recover 3 slots worth of magic. But with the Arcane Grimoire, it's 4. And of course, this book can act like a spell book for you to inscribe your spells into. This is a handy and very thematic option. Just right on the power level, in my opinion. The Artificer's all-purpose tool has several abilities, and I think it's a little underrated, to be honest. First, it can turn into any artisan tool that you want, and you're automatically proficient with it, even if you don't have that proficiency. So when the DM wants to know what tools you need to make the crazy thing that you're trying to make, and how you're keeping them all on your person, you've got an easy answer. All you really need are materials and maybe a heat source and a little bit of time. The tool also allows you to have an extra cantrip for 8 hours. Artificers might be the most cantrip-hungry class in the game. Mending is almost a necessity. You might need Firebolt as a ranged option. And if no one has guidance, you're going to need that too. Having an extra cantrip is really useful, and this cantrip can come from any class in the game, and it still counts as an Artificer spell for you. Forget Firebolt, just take Eldritch Blast. The Sorcerer's Bloodwell Vial is probably the strongest of these options. This small vial requires you to put some of your blood into it. When you spend hit dice to regain hit points, you regain 5 sorcery points. You can use this once per day. Interestingly enough, it doesn't say regain hit points through a short rest, just by spending hit dice. So if you have some other way to spend hit dice for hit points, such as a dwarf's Dwarven Fortitude feat, which allows you to spend hit dice when you take the dodge action, then you can activate this magic item. So keep that in mind. But this item is strong. Sorcery points might even be more valuable than spell slots of sorcerers. And this gives you 5 of them. That would let you twin cast Dominate Person if you were of the mind to and high enough level. And I don't think I need to tell you how strong that is. The Bard's Rhythm Maker drum is probably the weakest of the options. Bards don't have many spells that make spell attack rolls, so that part is kind of wasted. And as an action, once per day, you can recover 1 of your Bardic Inspirations. Considering at 5th level we get all of our Bardic Inspirations back on a short rest, that's not awesome. Maybe go with the Reveler's Concertina instead. It lets you cast Otto's Irresistible Dance once per day. Doesn't quite fit into this whole theme, but it's pretty good. Number 2, Mind Crystals. These new magic items from the Shattered Obelisk Adventure module might be some of my new favorites. These consumable stones function essentially like scrolls, but instead of containing spells, they contain metamagic uses. There's 1 common, 4 uncommon, and 2 rare, each representing a different metamagic option from the core list. What's even more interesting is that after using a mind crystal, it's still a valuable gem worth 50 gold pieces. And considering one of them is a common consumable magic item that technically only costs 50 gold to buy anyway, should buying magic items be a thing in your game, of course, that would cause some weirdness in the economy of what you're doing. So watch out for that, DMs. That common option we just mentioned is probably the standout in my opinion. It gives a spell you cast the subtle meta magic feature, meaning the spell won't require verbal or somatic components. Can you imagine that in the hands of a bard, charm person, suggestion, or dominate person? So many classes want to give meta magics a try. This way, you can give a try without multiclassing or taking feet. Sorcerers would want this too. They always want more meta magic options. Number 3, Wand of Fireballs. This is an oldie but a goodie. This rare magic wand requires attunement by a spellcaster, so no issues there. It has 7 charges, and every dawn recharges 1d6 plus 1 of those charges. If you use the last charge, roll a d20, and on 1, poof, no more wand. You can spend a charge to cast the Fireball spell at its base, 8d6 damage level, with a save DC of 15. You can spend additional charges to upcast the spell by 1 level per charge. I don't particularly recommend that. I don't think Fireball upcasts all that well, but it is an available option for desperate times. What I really like about this wand has less to do with what you do with it. That's pretty straightforward, but more of what it allows your character to do. You see, for arcane spellcasters, there's a lot of pressure to have some sort of area effect spell that clears out minions in one fashion or another. Maybe it's a wizard's fireball, maybe it's a bard's hypnotic pattern, whatever it is, there's a push to take some sort of blowy up spell. But now, when we need to blowy up something, you use the blowy up wand and save your spells for something a little more interesting. You can't deny the power of the fireball spell, and sometimes it's a little too good not to take. The bard doesn't have a lot of area effect damage spells. Artificers are only half casters and take time to get there. Even sorcerers and wizards are expected to take it. But sorcerers have the fewest number of known spells in the game, and wizards often prefer to be more like problem solvers instead of always exploding everyone to death. Having this wand almost gives permission to pick spells that are maybe a bit more interesting and fun to use. After all, when you need to blow something up, just use the wand. Number 4, Pearl of Power. I don't know what it is about this magic item, but it just seems so D&D. There's just something about a jewel of magical energy that just gets the creative juices flowing. This is an uncommon item that requires attunement from a spellcaster, which makes sense considering what it does. Its rarity also makes it a very available item. Once per day, as an action, you can recover a spent spell slot. Now, the next part of this is a little confusing. It's worded very weirdly. You can recover a first, second, or third level spent spell slot. But you can also recover higher level spell slots. But they are recovered at 3rd level. Because what does that mean? Imagine if you're a 7th level wizard who has just cast their only 4th level spell slot. You have a round to prepare for the next fight, and you would like to take that time to use your Pearl of Power. But you haven't used any 3rd level spell slots yet. But that's okay, because you have used a 4th level spell slot. Using the Pearl of Power would give you a 4th 3rd level spell slot. It lets you stack your power for later use. Having that extra 3rd level spell slot to cast another counter spell or even a fireball could make a real difference. An interesting little fact is that the Artificer has an infusion called the Spell Refueling Ring that does something very similar as to the Pearl of Power. Pretty much the same. It just doesn't have that part of front-loading 3rd level spells after you cast a higher level spell slot. Number 5, Staff of Charming. You probably thought I was going to pick the Staff of Power or something, right? Well, think again. I'm not crazy about such high-level rarity items because you just don't see them in play enough. And bards and artificers can't use them. But this little gem is wholly underrated. This rare magic staff requires attunement and is available to all primary casters, including the Warlock. Yes, technically the Artificer isn't on this list, but that class was introduced well after this item was created. I wouldn't be surprised if there's an errata somewhere that puts it on the list. And if not, no big deal, because the Artificers at 14th level ignore class restrictions on magic items. So there. The staff counts as a magic quarterstaff, which is nice. And it has 10 charges, which will cover 1d8 plus 2 every day. Of course, if you use them all and roll a 1 on your d20, it's kaputska. You can cast the spells Charm Person, Command, and Comprehend languages. I mean, every bard wants Charm Person, but they don't always have room for it in their spells known. Command is a great spell. That's pretty rare and isn't normally available to any of the classes that we're talking about here, outside of some subclasses. Comprehend languages is niche, but a good investigator spell when needed. And even with all that, that's not the most interesting part about this staff. If you fail a saving throw against an enchantment spell that targets only you, so say Dominate Person, once per day you can use the staff to automatically pass that save instead. There aren't many effects in 5e that let you turn a failed saving throw into a success. But that isn't the best part either. It's just the appetizer to the main dish. When you pass a saving throw against an enchantment spell that targets only you, whether through the staff ability or from your own good roll, you can use your reaction to spend 1 charge from the staff to bounce the spell back at the caster as if you had cast it. So that Dominate Person spell the vampire thought was going to ruin your day, well, it's not going to end like how they thought. And by the way, there's no limit to how many times you can use this ability outside of the staff's charges, which is 10. I mean, I don't know how many single target enchantment spells we can ever expect to target us, but you can really make those casters regret their life choices. And to think, this item is only rare, which I think is pretty low for most magic staves that can cast spells. Much more accessible at earlier levels of play. I mean, I like the Staff of Power in Magi as much as the next D&D guy, but realistically, you're going to be upper tier 3, lower tier 4 before you ever see something like that. And most games just don't go that high. But this staff could appear in most games. And it has a wicked secondary ability that's pretty unique in D&D. So those are 5 magic items for the arcane classes in D&D 5e. If you want more videos like this, then you need to subscribe, ring the bell, smash that like button, tell us in the comments below what magic items you would choose. And I'll see you in the parlor.